Amazon came out and they said the other day that peeing in a bottle with their delivery drivers was not a true story. It didn't happen. But now they came out and said that it actually does happen. Have you seen this story yet? Crazy story to start off today, but welcome back to Michael on the mic. Crazy story. We got to start off today's episode with SpaceX. This guy was just walking on his property, minding his own business, doing his own thing, when all of a sudden he comes across a piece of a rocket ship the size of a punching bag, like a 5 foot long by like 3 foot wide, just piece of a spaceship on his property, lying on the ground. It like sunk down like a couple inches in the ground, and this was in Washington State in the U.S. This was a really crazy story. So essentially what happened is a pressure vessel from the SpaceX Falcon 9 rocket stage fell on a man's farm in Washington State last week. Size like a punching bag, couple feet, like 5 feet long by 2-3 feet wide. And this essentially was something known as a COPV, Composite-Overwrapped Pressure Vessel, which holds like helium and pressurized gases inside of it. It came off of the Falcon 9. Essentially, when the rocket launches, it goes, the first phase, second stage, and while it was getting thrusted into space, the second stage, pieces normally break off. They either usually burn up in the atmosphere or they can fall into the ocean. But this time, the piece fell onto a man's property in Washington State. A Grant County, Washington property owner. He said roughly the size and shape of a punching bag. He found just a part of a rocket, looked like it could have been from an alien ship. This is the way he described it. It was on his property just sitting there. He called authorities. He's like, what is going on? Why is there, what is this thing on my property? And can someone come and get it? So the law enforcement, they've never dealt with anything like this before. They don't have any sort of protocol or anything to do. So essentially, they called up SpaceX. They're like, hey, we got your rocket. We got something that we think is yours. They sent some pictures over. SpaceX said, yeah, that's ours. And what happened is SpaceX came by, sent some employees over to pick up part of their rocket and return it to them. Law enforcement was just like, we don't have any protocol, so if it's like we found your thing, so now we're giving it back to you. But this was a really crazy story because this thing, the COPV, stores heliums at pressures of 6,000 PSI, which helps to propel the rocket into space. Normally, these things don't land, especially out of all places in the world, for it to land in Washington State, pretty close to, one of, SpaceX and one of Tesla's main facilities in California. A little unusual, but that is what happened there. A little puzzling, but it's not typical for this to happen, but it did. Next up is YouTube. YouTube is experimenting with hiding dislikes to protect creators' well-being. So YouTube announced that it is currently experimenting, running out a couple of tests with a number of creators to test discouraging dislike mobs from deliberately downvoting and disliking people's videos. So what happens is essentially a lot of times when people see that there are people disliking a video and they see the dislike counter going up and up, it encourages more and more people to actually dislike the video. So the experiment that YouTube is running is essentially where it looks like this, where you see the total number of likes, but it just gives you the option to dislike the video. You don't know how many people have disliked it, how many people, you don't know. There's no counter for the dislike button. And this was one of three approaches they could have done. A couple of approaches were just get rid of the numbers altogether for both likes and dislikes. That was an option. The other option is what they did, keep the like counter, get rid of the dislike counter, or just get rid of the dislike button altogether. But they thought the best way to go about this is to still offer, and allow people to dislike a video. It provides great feedback for creators. It lets people know if people like their videos. But at the same time, it doesn't encourage a mob of people just flocking over to doing what everyone else is doing and disliking a video. So no one knows how many people dislike it other than the creators, and that can prevent and protect creators' well-being. So a lot of times YouTube says they've heard a lot of feedback from creators about, protecting their well-being, mental sanity, because they don't want people to, feel bad about themselves, I guess, to get depressed, or you don't know how all of these dislikes, how of all of these reactions to videos, how they play out for the creators. So they said, according to feedback, YouTube is going to be experimenting. This isn't like for everyone yet. They're experimenting with a couple of different accounts to see how this would actually work. We've seen in the past that Instagram has also tested before getting rid of the like counter, so people don't know how many likes pictures or videos get. So this is something similar. Like Instagram doesn't have a dislike button, but YouTube, they're just testing getting rid of the dislike counter on the videos. So we'll wait and see how that actually plays out. Here's a story with Google. So Google is limiting which apps can see everything else you have installed. So a lot of times when you have an app on your phone, if you have an Android, the way it works is the developers, whoever made the app, can see, and they could use the data to see what other apps you have on your phone. And they could use this data to learn stuff about you, maybe learn your political party, learn political affiliations, maybe dating preferences, personal traits, things like that. They can, even though they don't have access to data within those apps, just by seeing what apps you have downloaded on your phone, it could help them figure out more about you as a person. So what Google and the Google Play Store is now doing is now they're only allowing this feature to specific apps. Certain apps that are going to have access to this are going to be those that prevent phishing or detect viruses on your phone and protect your phone from antivirus apps and things like that. The other type of apps that are also going to have access to this are going to be banking apps, digital wallet apps, and other apps that involve financial transaction functionality. So that those are for security purposes. They believe that they should have access to knowing what other apps you have on your phone. But if they don't fall into one of those two categories, not like a banking app or an antivirus or file manager app, well, then they're not going to have access to it. And the only way they can is if they apply using a form on Google, and they're going to have to apply, and Google's going to have to determine if they think that these apps are, if they need to have this information. Do these developers need to know what other apps you have on your phone, or is it just useless information that they're requesting when it doesn't help with that specific app? So this is going to help a lot with, privacy, protecting some personal information. And Google says they're really going to crack down on this. They say any developer who wants to keep this permission on their app needs to complete a declaration form. They're going to need to get approved for it. And if developers apply for it, or they keep the permission in the code, but Google doesn't believe they need it, well, these apps could be suspended. They could terminate the developers' accounts, and they're going to take strict measures. They're not going to treat this lightly. They think this is a big deal, protecting people's private information. So I think that's a good step in the right direction. We'll continue to see how this plays out, what happens here. Next up is a crazy story with NFTs. So Coinbase, 2 employees at Coinbase exchanged NFT rings with their wedding vows. And normally when you think of a wedding, you just think of people, giving each other a ring, saying their vows. But this couple, they exchanged NFT rings. They had their phones out during the middle of the ceremony. Typically when you see a bride and a groom have their phone out, you would think, what's going on? This is not a good sign. But according to what happened is they exchanged an NFT. They created a token with only 2 coins where they gave each other. And the name of the token is Taba'at, the Hebrew word for ring. And they only minted 2 coins. Only 2 will ever be able to be minted, and they attached like a certain graphic to it for the NFT that looks like this right here. It's just like a graphic of a couple of different, geometric shapes moving around on the screen. But, an NFT can be anything you want it to be. Any sort of digital, it could be a photo, it could be a graphic, really anything digital that you want, it could be. And right now, a lot of people wouldn't find this to be anything exciting, but this is the first time that we're seeing NFTs used in this way. We've never seen this before, and this is pretty interesting, pretty different. Let me know what you guys think of this. It was just a very different thing, and you can actually go and see for yourself that there's 2 coins minted, and there's never going to be more made of this coin Tabaat, and they have the NFT associated with this. So it's not like this is going to be worth a lot of money. People are talking about NFTs that sell for tens of millions of dollars. This probably won't be worth much of anything other than this couple, but it's important because it's the first time that we're seeing something like this, and maybe we'll see more people do this now. We don't know. We'll have to wait and see if more people start to do things like this, where they use NFTs more in their personal life. Because everyone's wondering, what are the uses? What's the use for these things? What is the use for an NFT? You have like a digital thing on your phone, a digital asset on your phone, and no one else can see it or do anything with it. And what they just did here with their wedding vows could very well be a use case that we might see with it. Here's a story with Waymo. So Waymo CEO John Krafik, I believe that's how you pronounce his name. He stepped down and replaced by 2 co-CEOs, 2 people that were already working at the company, named Takedra and Dimitri. So that was previously Waymo's chief operating officer and Waymo's chief technology officer. So essentially, Waymo is a subsidiary of Google, and they work on self-driving technology, robo-taxis, and things like that. So their CEO officially stepped down. He said, after 5.5 exhilarating years leading this team, I've just decided to depart from my role as CEO of Waymo and kick off new adventures, looking for like a refresh period to connect with his family, friends, travel, and things like that. This really isn't going to affect the company too much. The company has a lot going on right now with their couple of different platforms, like the rollout of Waymo One and Waymo Via, which are starting to build a robo-taxi service, testing that out currently. So we'll wait and see what happens here. A little interesting, though, that they were replaced by 2 co-CEOs. I don't really hear too many stories about there being co-CEOs of a pretty big company like Waymo. So it'll be interesting to see how that plays out. Because it's not the typical scenario. Normally, you would see just one person replace the CEO, but that was not the case here. Replaced by co-CEOs that both worked as high C-level executives at the company before. I think this could be a good thing, though. It's has 2 different mindsets, 2 different minds at the helm of a on-demand self-driving company, and this could be a good thing. So Waymo, they have been testing their fully autonomous vehicles. They already have a test service being run in Phoenix. So we'll continue to see how this company develops over the next couple of years, if this change in leadership will affect them. But in my opinion, I think it's going to be a good thing moving forward. I don't think it can hurt having 2 people who have both been at the company for a while now be in charge of it. I don't think that can hurt at all. Here's a story with Aptura. So Aptura, it was like a failed electric vehicle startup a couple years back, but it's come back from the dead. It's back, and now they are trying to build their vehicles for around 2 a second time. Originally, this company was founded in 2006, before Tesla ever rolled out its first electric vehicles. But the problem is that they were relying on funding from a government program that essentially denied them funding. It was going to grant them about $100 million in funding that would have allowed them to continue to build their vehicles, roll them out. But then what happened was it was contingent on Aptura actually raising $80 million in private funding rounds. And during that time, things went pretty poorly with the economy. So VCs and people were not investing as much in companies like this, like an electric vehicle startup like Aptura. So they weren't able to raise the private rounds of funding of $80 million, which means they didn't get the funding from the government, from that government program. And essentially they weren't able to survive and they couldn't be in business anymore. But now they're back, and essentially the way their cars work is they are three-wheeled and they are solar. They have like solar panels on them to help charge the vehicles. The whole goal of these cars is going to be making them as light as possible, have long-lasting battery, and be able to charge themselves using solar energy with solar panels on the vehicle. So we'll see what happens now, but this company is coming back to life with the same co-founders. They're going to be at the helm of the company, and now they're coming back strong with some more funding. They've raised a lot more money. Now it's a lot easier to raise money, especially for electric vehicle companies. With everything we've seen over the last 2-3 years, it's become increasingly easy for companies in the electric vehicle space to raise money. So we'll see what happens here. The design of them is very interesting. It looks like it's out of like a movie, but they're three-wheeled vehicles with solar panels on them. We'll see how they can step up. They've been working on this for years. They've been working on this since 2006. Then really they failed sort of in 2011, but now they're back, round 2, and hopefully this time it goes better than the first round. So speaking of turning a company around, GameStop is on a hiring spree. They are hiring like tens of new employees, C-level executives from other companies. They've been hiring a lot of people who are high up at Amazon. They hired a new person who's the chief growth officer just the other day, Wilk, from Amazon. They also hired COO Jenna Owens and CTO Matt Francis, who were also from pretty big companies as well. They were involved in Amazon, and now GameStop is trying to turn their business around, trying to hire high-level executives who have experience in the tech industry, whether that's with Amazon, whether that's with Walmart, and they're building their apps. They're trying to get people who had a lot of experience in successful technology companies or technology products. And ever since they got Cohen, who was one of the founders of Chewy, on their board, that has been their goal. Their goal is to try and be like Chewy, is like Amazon, but for dog products. GameStop now is trying to do the same thing. They're trying to be an Amazon, but for games. It's going to be very hard, in my opinion, for them to actually do this. They are building a great team, but the problem with GameStop is that their core business used to just be selling games, selling the discs to people who had like an Xbox or a PlayStation, and you needed the disc for the consoles. But now the problem is you don't need the discs. You could just download the software onto your PS5 or onto your Xbox. You don't need to have a disc anymore, and a lot of these consoles are getting rid of the disc drive altogether. So that's the problem. They can't just focus on selling games anymore. They have to worry more about, they have to try and find to do something different, because now you could just buy an Xbox, online, or a PlayStation online directly from the company, and you don't need to go to a GameStop. You just don't. So we'll have to wait and see what they're going to do to actually change their business model away from just selling games and hardware, and try and change it from a hardware business into a software technology business. They have all the right people now in place. They're hiring a lot of different high-level executives who have experience in the technology industry, but they need to figure out how they're going to make money now that people don't need to buy discs anymore to play games on an Xbox or a PlayStation or things like that. Speaking of devices, though, Samsung, they just dropped the Galaxy Z Fold 2 price by $200 and also launched a referral program. It's like an incentive that gives $100 to you, $100 to your friend when they make like a qualifying purchase. So this is a pretty big deal because this is Samsung's high-end foldable phone. Used to cost $2,000, now it costs $1,800, and they're also having this referral program which gives each person like a unique referral code where now you can get a discount. Essentially, the way it works is you can use the Samsung Members app to share a unique referral code with friends or family, and it'll give you $100 in credit towards you spending it however you want at a Samsung store. They just have to make a qualifying purchase. And I'll put a link down to that below where you can go and check that out. But pretty interesting to see. We see a lot of these referral programs with a lot of technology companies. A lot of different apps have these, like Uber, DoorDash, Postmates, all these other apps, like those technology apps have these sort of referral programs. We see with Webull and Robinhood, they also have referral programs. But now we're seeing it with Samsung and their actual they sell hardware, they sell devices. So not something we typically see with a company like Samsung, but this is pretty interesting how now they have this program in place. I think it's definitely going to help. Who wouldn't want to have $100 if you already have a Samsung and you know a friend who's going to buy one? Who's not going to want to get $100 and give their friend $100 for just buying something they probably already would get anyways? So exciting stuff there. Big news with Rivian. Rivian is an electric vehicle company. They have big orders from Amazon for delivery vans, but now they're also going to be releasing very, very shortly their R1S SUV and their R1T pickup truck, but with a pretty big incentive to it, a pretty big deal that's better than Tesla, better than other car companies out there, and that's that they have a 175,000 mile warranty, and they also have another warranty, like that warranty is for the battery pack and electric drivetrain, 175,000 miles. But they also have another warranty for everything else that's covered up to 60,000 miles. So the first warranty is 8-year, 175,000 mile warranty for the battery pack and electric drivetrain. The warranty on everything else is 5 years or 60,000 miles. And this is better than Tesla, better than a lot of other car companies. Tesla, they do have like an unlimited warranty in terms of miles for their battery and for their drivetrain. They have unlimited mileage coverage, but in terms of everything else on the vehicle, Tesla only has a warranty that's 4 years or 50,000 miles. So Rivian's bumped that up a bit, 5 years or 60,000 miles. They've upped it 1 year or 10,000 miles. So it's a pretty big deal. It's not game changer by any means, but it is pretty significant considering that we're getting a lot of different electric vehicles out there now. And when batteries keep getting better, electric drivetrains and components keep getting better, the only way you can start to differentiate yourself is with like design and function, like how the vehicle actually looks, maybe the infotainment system on the inside, and then also these warranties. Right now with all these startups, a lot of them look very similar, to be honest. Like a lot of these vehicles have pretty similar parts, have pretty similar designs. The designs are different, but pretty similar components that go into them. And one way that they can incentivize people to make that change from like a combustion, like a gas-powered vehicle to an electric vehicle is to give them a sense of security, knowing that they have a warranty that lasts 175,000 miles, which is much longer than any other. Like for gas-powered vehicles, that warranty is way better than for gas-powered vehicles. Gas-powered vehicles don't have warranties anywhere near that. So could help get some more people transfer from gas to electric vehicles. Rivian's also going to be providing a concierge service for repairs, maintenance. They're going to have people who can come and service your vehicles in like a parking lot of your office, on your driveway. It's going to be a service called Rivian Remote Care. They said they're also going to have more than 40 service centers across the country in the coming year. And they're really trying to step it up. Like, they have a big deal with Amazon already, which is going to be selling. They're going to have orders of over 100,000 delivery vans from Amazon. With all of that money, they can now start building and focusing more on their actual direct-to-consumer products as well, like their SUV and their truck. So, big deal with Rivian. They're not a publicly traded company, but they do have some pretty cool-looking vehicles, and their SUV and pickup truck have some pretty nice features, pretty great warranties, and they are going to be rolling out very, very soon. Next up is a story with Spotify. So Spotify just leaked another look at what people are calling the car thing. It doesn't have an official name yet from Spotify, but Spotify has been working on a product that's going to potentially go inside of a car. It has like a knob on one side, a couple of buttons on the top, and it looks sort of just like either like a mini tablet or like a phone, but it'll be positioned in a car. And it's just a car gadget that's a voice-controlled music player that allows you to access Spotify. They've been working on this for a while now. We first heard about it back in 2019. It was formally announced. And this has been in their testing facilities. You know, they've been testing this, working on this for a while now. And we haven't seen any real designs on it yet. But we first got pictures of it just the other day. On Mac Rumors, contributor Steve Moser found the images in Spotify's app code. And these renders, these pictures, match up quite closely with the photographs of the real deal submitted as part of filings to the Federal Communications Commission, the FCC. And it's a pretty big deal. So my opinion, we have some renders, we have some, designs that we've seen, but doesn't mean that this product is actually going to go to market. Doesn't mean that they're actually going to sell it. We don't, they have no formal launch date of the product. We don't know if they're actually even going to end up doing it. But seeing that they have filed with the FCC, seeing now the in-app renders, and hearing a little bit more about it, more and more information we continue to hear about this product, the more and more likely it's going to be to actually release. My opinion, do I think it's going to release? I don't know. For me personally, I'd probably just use my phone. I wouldn't use this. I wouldn't use something like this for Spotify. I'd much rather just use my phone with the Spotify app on it, just plug it in with a USB, and I'm good to go. But who knows? I think as more and more electric vehicles start getting produced and the infotainment systems in cars get better and better, I don't see people buying this, at least a lot. There's definitely a market for it, but it's not a product, in my opinion, that would be a massive home run for years to come, just based on what I've heard about it. They could have some really cool features that I don't know about, but essentially what they've spoken about is that originally they were testing the product to help Spotify and their developers better understand how to actually better understand what users are listening to and better understand like listeners' habits while on the go and traveling. So that's what it was originally used for, but now I just see as the infotainment systems in cars get better, I don't know if this is going to be something that is really going to be widely adopted if it does ever get released. But pretty cool that we do see new renders, in-app renders of this. It does look pretty cool. Next up is a really crazy story with Amazon. So Amazon came out and they said the other day that peeing in a bottle with their delivery drivers was not a true story. It didn't happen. But now they came out and said that it actually does happen, and they apologized for it. So Amazon, they apologized, saying that peeing in bottles thing is actually a thing for its drivers, and that their original tweet where they said it didn't happen was incorrect. So a couple weeks ago and earlier last week, Amazon, their official Twitter page, had said that paying workers $15 an hour doesn't make you a progressive workplace when you union bust and make workers urinate in water bottles. That was what Representative Mark Pocon had said. And Amazon responded to this saying that it was not true. That didn't happen. Then they came out recently. They got a lot of blowback from this. People were not happy because they're like, it is true. This happens. So then Amazon came out. They responded and said that their original tweet was incorrect and they owed an apology to Pocon and that it does happen. So they said that we know that drivers can and do have trouble finding restrooms because of traffic or sometimes rural routes. And this has been especially hard, and especially been the case during COVID when public restrooms have been closed. They said they're working on this, trying to find a solution, but it's not just a problem for Amazon, it's a problem for the entire industry, for other delivery companies out there. Many people say, Amazon, they have really harsh hours, harsh deadlines that people need to reach, and having to deliver a lot of packages in a short period of time. And they also explain how there's been recent rumors and recent talks about Amazon installing AI cameras that are going to watch their delivery drivers that people have not been happy about. So adding this on top of it made people were not happy about it. Because first of all, these AI cameras, they're saying that these are going to see if people, let's say, pee outside of a vehicle. It'll see if drivers do that. And it'll also see, it would see if people pee in a bottle inside the vehicle. So either way, this is something that Amazon says they're working on. They basically deflected it, saying that it's an industry-wide problem for delivery drivers. But we'll see what happens here. I don't think there's a real solution to it, unless they put like a bathroom inside of a vehicle, but that's not really going to happen. So we'll have to wait and see what solution they come up with. But they did say that peeing in a bottle does happen with its drivers, and they did apologize for their tweet. Speaking of vehicles, Tesla Roadster, meet MG Cyberster. Probably one of the worst names I've ever heard. Cyberster is not the catchiest of names, but British brand's electric sports car, MG, the brand MG, officially unveiled and revealed full details of the car that they're going to be showing off later this month at the Shanghai Motor Show. So later in April, we're going to expect to get full details on this car, but from pictures, it looks pretty cool. So MG, they work on, they're known for pretty small vehicles, like tiny drop-top sports cars. And they said on Thursday that the name of a car they're going to be working on, it's an electric vehicle. One they're going to be releasing is called the Cyberster, MG Cyberster. It looks pretty retro. The front lights, there aren't even lights there, just like built in, it looks like metal. But they said the company calls them Magic Eye, and the headlights are not always on. But when the driver wants to put them on, they flip on a light, and it will reveal these lights behind the car's exterior. So this will be pretty cool. It looks pretty futuristic. They said that the mileage on it, the battery life, would be around 500 miles per charge. That isn't like an official figure, but that is what they're currently saying. We will get more details on this towards the end of April when it is officially released at the Shanghai Motor Show. But as of right now, we have a picture, we have a name, and we have how many miles they're saying it would be able to drive on a single charge. Next up is a cable company that has prided itself on no data caps, not putting any cap on the amount of data users can use. Now they're saying you're getting a data cap and you're going to have to pay extra for data because of pizza. That is what they said. They wrote a letter out to customers, to email, like to subscribers, comparing data and data usage to pizza. They said essentially that think of, data like pizza. While customers who subscribe to 1 gig get the largest slices Those with internet 500 get a slightly smaller piece, and so on. They said, so essentially think of it like if you get one piece of pizza, they're comparing that to having like one, using certain number of gigabytes of data. They say if you want to go back and get seconds of pizza, you have to pay more. Same with data, you have to pay more for that. So really, this was didn't really make sense at all. This comparison, this analogy didn't really make much sense, because data at this point, it really costs barely anything for these companies. It is so cheap. Used to be very expensive, but now it's cheap. Like an extra gigabyte of data costs nothing for these companies. Yet they're comparing it to pizza, and they say you're gonna have to pay $10 more for every 50 gigabytes more that you want to use. They said it's automatically going to apply increments of 50 gigabytes. They said you're not going to ever have to pay more than $50 additional per billing statement, no matter how much data you use. But crazy stuff. They sent this email to subscribers that really made no sense at all, comparing data to pizza, and it just was really ridiculous. Like, it didn't make any sense, because more data, like using data at this point is so cheap, and it doesn't cost the company really anything extra to give you 10 gigabytes extra of data. Pizza, it just didn't make any sense. And switching gears a bit, last story of the day is a mysterious brain infection has been making bears act like friendly dogs. So what has been happening lately in California? There's been a mysterious neurological disease in young Californian black bears that's making them behave like pet dogs. They are very cozy with humans. They approach very friendly. They also tilt their heads like dogs would do. They have lethargic movements, muscle tremors, walk in circles. They're a little more underweight. So the way they're acting, in some manners, tilting their head, acting very, just not being aggressive at all, being very friendly, makes them appear like sort of like dogs. These only happens to the young bears. So the bears, which are typically around 1 year old, that are suffering from this, the disease is called, I believe it is called encephalitis. What is it called? Where is it? It's called, I don't know what it's called, but anyways, the disease essentially makes them act like very non-aggressive, and people have been spotting them. They've been either, the first story where they found a bear was actually, it walked into a school, into a classroom. That was the first story. The other story where they found it was outside someone's house, just walking up to them, acting like a dog. And they say many people, they think they can handle this, and they feed the bears, but it's not safe to do this, because feeding and interacting with bears, even if they're acting friendly, like a dog, they have this, isn't good. People shouldn't get comfortable just feeding bears and acting around bears, because bears aren't safe. They're wild animals, and anything can happen. So they said that's not something that they would encourage people to do. 2 bears in particular now reside in rescue centers where they constantly get treatment for this brain inflammation. Most bears who have this disease aren't so lucky, because acting like the way this makes them act, typically either the bear's mother abandons them, or they can't survive in the wild. So most of the bears with this condition aren't so lucky, but it's been more and more common, cited recently. Scientists aren't worried about the implications on the bear population, because the bear population in California has increased to between 10 and 15,000 30 years ago to now 30 to 40,000 today. So bear population has increased quite dramatically. They're not worried about it, but this is making a lot of bears around 1 year old or less appear like friendly dogs. Some people, they could get into pretty dangerous situations if they start feeding them, and start interacting with them a bit more. So that's really all I got for you guys today. Just a quick episode on what is going on. Hope you enjoyed today's video. If you made it this far, comment down below a bear emoji. And I hope you enjoyed. Don't forget, you can get 4 free stocks valued up to $1,600 when you download the Webull investing app using the link down below. I hope you enjoyed, and I'll see you guys in the next episode.